And we'll turn now to Texas Representative, member of the House Committee on Ways and Means Committee, Congressman Jodey Arrington. Good to see you, Congressman. Thanks so much for coming on. We do appreciate that. Talk to me about this. So you have this bill that Congress is eyeing, which obviously you would be a part of, a bipartisan solution trying to find that. Protecting our Children Act, Protecting Our Kids Act put out there. Are you supportive of that? Because there's been a lot of talk, a lot of rhetoric from political leaders, banning assault rifles or high-capacity magazines, raising age limits, intensifying background checks. Where are you in terms of legislation on gun laws?
Well, Sean, it turns out it's a lot easier to give a title to legislation like Protecting Our Children Act than actually having laws that will effectuate that outcome, especially when you have a society that is disintegrating and degrading at its fundamental level and familial level. And those are places that are hard for legislation to reach and hard for lawmakers to fix because they're the deeper root causes. But to your question about legislation, I think we have to do a couple of things as we debate this issue, just like we do after every mass shooting. What are our first principles? Don't forget we have a fundamental right for the good guys to be armed and ready to defend themselves against the bad guys. Remember this, when you're talking about 18 to 21-year-olds, they are prohibited from buying a handgun today. And most of the mass shootings that have occurred over the last 2 or 3 decades have occurred by the perpetrator who is less than 18 years old. So they're not following the laws. They're not abiding by the gun-free zones. And so I'm more interested in the things that will actually work. And I think we still have to look at what did Uvalde do to prepare, to train? How did they lock their doors? Were there people armed and ready to meet the perpetrator with greater or equal force? So we will have a lot of these discussions that we've had in the past, but we don't need feel-good solutions just to say we found some compromise. We need to do things that will actually work. And I think the best scenario is identify early if you can, but make sure you've hardened the security and the good guys have the guns to defend themselves, because the bad guys will find a way. There is no foolproof system, Sean. There's no foolproof system.
Yeah, the discussion, as you see mass shooting gun laws each time. But again, to point out, Chicago, New York City have some of the strictest gun laws in this country, and that is a fact, as well as gun violence and violence in terms of guns being used. That happens in New York City and Chicago at a higher rate despite gun laws. Again, I always try to point this out. You almost impossible to own a gun in Manhattan, even to bring one in, unless you're a criminal. Somehow that works out. I want to talk about what you were pointing, other outcomes or other ways to handle the situation. A Trafalgar poll asked this: do you believe that preventing properly trained teachers and staff from carrying a firearm makes schools more or less dangerous? This is broken down by party affiliation here, so that's interesting here. Republicans on the left say it's more dangerous if you're preventing a teacher to have a gun. Democrats, again, still the plurality of it there, 48% there. Others, 57%, again, they are saying it is more dangerous there. But bottom line there, it seems to be that many feel teachers should be properly trained to own or carry a gun, also known as the Guardian program. How do you feel about that? Would that be somewhat of a solution?
It absolutely is a cornerstone of security for our children and for our society. I wish it weren't so. I wish we didn't have to turn schools into maximum security facilities, but we are where we are, and we can talk ad nauseum about the root causes that are driving this, but the reality is we have kids like this young man who was consumed with evil to go on a murderous rampage and kill a bunch of innocent elementary school kids. I have 3 elementary school kids of my own, and I feel a whole lot better that my school and the school that my children attend would have trained teachers, coaches, and administrators ready ready to meet the perpetrator with equal or greater force, because 98% of mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. They're soft targets. That's just one example. So the background checks, look, we can try to find ways to slow people down and make sure that unstable or violent criminals don't have guns. But Sean, 85% of the gun-related crimes are committed with people who've stolen them or bought them on the black market. So what's the conclusion? Lock your doors and be trained and ready with a firearm buy to stop these perpetrators, because even law enforcement, and we should support law enforcement, and they should be well trained, but you cannot entrust to the experts your life and your safety and the safety of your community. At some point, you've got to have that personal responsibility, because you have that personal God-given constitutionally protected right. And that's what I'm going to be talking a lot about, I'm sure, in the wake of this shooting and in this debate in Washington.
Right. And again, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 4 dead and gunmen also dead, brings a total to 5 there. Several wounded. Yeah, horrible. But he also used a rifle, according to authorities, and also a pistol as well. And that gets you to the legislation talk. Yahoo News put this out as a headline here, and I'll read it to you. It says, as mass shootings grip nation, Congress eyes elusive bipartisan solutions on guns. It goes on, but I just wanted to close on this if I can. Yes. You know as well as I do, better than I do, that this, to get through the Senate, it's going to need 60 votes. The Democrats hold the House. But if it goes to the Senate, if any law makes it to the Senate, you're going to need 60 votes. Democrats clearly know this. That's why there's that call we showed earlier in the report to end the filibuster. Is this going to, I guess my question is this, is it going to go anywhere? If you even find some sort of bipartisan solution of, well, we'll raise the age limit, or we'll add red flag laws into gun legislation. But where does it really go? Do you actually get 60 votes in the Senate?
I think practically and politically you don't get 60 votes, but here's what we should all as lawmakers focus on. What will actually deter what happened in Uvalde? And I haven't heard anything from the gun control lobby or the advocates in Congress with red flag laws or even this 18 to 21-year-old. Listen, when my son or daughter graduates and they're independent, living on their own, by God, I want them to have the firepower to defend their home and their livelihoods in this fallen world that seems to be, continually backsliding and more dangerous. So I haven't heard a solution that would stop Uvalde. But when we get the final report, Sean, we might find out that Texas had all the right procedures and protocols and measures in place, but they weren't implemented. Maybe they should have locked the door and they didn't. Maybe they should have identified him earlier and they didn't. Maybe they should have had school marshals and guardians that were armed and ready and they didn't. So there are a lot of things that could have stopped or reduced the damage and the carnage, but we'll make that judgment when we get the final report. I don't want to rush to these debates that A, are going nowhere, and B, are not going to effectuate the outcome that we all want, which is less Uvalde.
Absolutely. We'll leave it right there. Congressman Jodey Arrington joining us live of Texas. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you for taking the time on the program for our viewers. We do appreciate that.
God bless. Thanks, Sean.
Too.